All right, it's 6 o'clock, so I'm going to call this meeting to order, the Round Rock Independent School District. It's Thursday, January 16th, and our first order of business is public hearing on the annual report, the TAPR, and Accelerated Instruction Evaluation. Do we have any speakers? Patty, did we have any speakers for the... No. So we do not have any speakers, so Dr. Flores, I will...
Yes. We're prepared right now to have Mandy Estes and Dr. Catherine Malerba give our TAPR report. And obviously, there's some highlights throughout that report, and we're excited about not only the past, but as we move for the future. So without further ado, Mandy Estes.
And actually, Dr. Malerba is going to start the beginning of this report,
right.
and then I'll go later.
Good evening, President Weir, trustees, and Dr. Flores, and thank you for all your countless hours of service this Board Appreciation Month. I'll try to minimize the number of hours of service tonight by moving quickly, and that'll be facilitated by the fact that we tried to make each slide, even though there are a lot of them, fairly self-explanatory, so we'll get started right away. This presentation is required by the Texas Education Code, as it is required to publish an annual report and then to hold a public hearing to discuss that report. My team is currently finishing up the printed and complete version of this report. All the TAPR reports are already available online. That makes up the bulk of the report, both on our website and the TEA website. We also print rather lengthy volumes and take them to the public libraries that are within the Round Rock ISD boundaries. These are the components of the annual report. I'll be stepping through each of them almost in this order. I will note that since House Bill 3, there'll be an addition. So next year, we'll also be required to look at our progress for the early literacy, early math, and CCMR goals that all districts are required to have. So I'll start with just a quick demographic overview. As you all know, our district is quite diverse. There's no single race ethnicity group that comprises a majority of our students. Last year, a little over 1 in 4 of our students were economically disadvantaged. That was a slight uptick from the prior year, and then you can see that we're at about 10% English language learners also. Here it is again. About 1 in 10 of our district students were English learners, but you can see there that we have 11 students in bilingual and ESL, and that's because we also have students who are native English speakers in our bilingual programs. On average, our principals had about a year more experience than the state average overall, and we had a larger percentage of our staff that are instructional staff compared to the state overall. And we had a lower teacher turnover rate for staff last year than the state overall. Just a few of the academic highlights. As you can see there in 2018-19, the district outperformed the state and the region at all levels of performance on English, ELA, and on mathematics STAR. This was similar for the percentage of students who met or exceeded expected progress on STAR in reading and math. 2018-2019 was the first year that campuses received A through F ratings from the state. You can see there the percentages of each of our campuses that earned an A. And for the first time, of course, we had a campus that was rated an F. And because we had a campus, more than 0 campuses, I should say, that had a rating of D or F, we would have been an A district and had A ratings in each domain. But of course, there's a TEA rule that must be reduced to a B if any campus in the district has a lower score than a C. Just wanted to highlight where our strengths are in the accountability system. Student achievement comes through loud and clear in terms of the percentage of campuses that have A's or B's in student achievement. School progress is another real strength, especially for our secondary campuses, and that's the indicator where we're being compared, a campus is being compared to campuses across the state with a similar level of economic disadvantage. The district earned, or our campuses earned 109 distinctions last year. Middle schools continued to be sort of a strong showing there, as was our performance in social studies overall and our performance in post-secondary readiness overall. Now, this is a lagging indicator here, so this is the state's 1 year behind on reporting average attendance rates. So in 17-18, average attendance rates exceeded 94% for all of our student groups. And this is really a point of pride that we get to highlight for the DAC, that I'm forgetting what that stands for, but one of our district level committees that's required to get a report on our dropout prevention practices. Our dropouts rate is incredibly low compared to the region and the state, so it's really something to be proud of. For the first time in preparing these reports, I decided to look at all the longitudinal rates that TEA calculates and publishes for us. If you may remember that they look at all three of these cohort rates when they're calculating state accountability ratings, and they'll give us the higher of the three. But I also wanted just to highlight that some of our students do need a little extra time to get finished with school, notably special education and ELL. A lot of those rates pop up in the fifth year. We get a few more graduates there. But yeah. I'll move into some of the college readiness indicators now. Another real point of pride that 40% of our 11th and 12th graders last year took an advanced placement or IB exam, and 80% of those that took an exam earned a criterion score on at least one exam. For several years now, the district's been offering SAT School Day, which allows us to show here that virtually every graduate took the ACT or SAT, and almost 60% of our students hit their criterion scores on reading and math on one of those assessments. When you add in the TSIA, which is available at every high school, that led to 72% of the class of 2018 being college ready in reading and math. And when you consider the other indicators, such as criterion score on APIB, military enlistment, earning industry certifications, just over 80% of the class of 2018 was considered college, career, or military ready. This is the slide that I have the least to say about because we're just required to publish the actual expenditures for the 17-18 budget year with the annual report. I'll just highlight our instructional expenditures ratio, which continues to be a higher proportion of our spending than the state overall. These are the accreditation statuses that are available on the TEA website and that we're asked to include. Obviously, we're still an accredited institution. Our first financial rating is A Superior, which is the top level performance. Last year, we were a B district, which is considered recognized performance, and our special ed determination status is meet requirements, which is the highest rating. I just wanted you to have a little snapshot. Required to include a lot of performance indicators in the full annual report. I just wanted you to have a chance to see how much the board goals have influenced the campus level goals, and just to see a few examples of how they're aligning their work to the board's priorities. The discipline, there were 405 disciplinary incidents that by state code were considered violent or criminal. Obviously, we see a lot more of those, or the biggest proportion of them, I should say, in high schools and middle schools. But I also want to point out that the majority of them really had more to do with drugs and alcohol than any kind of behavior like an assault or something that was along those lines. So another lagging indicator here when we start talking about students' performance in post-secondary But among the class of 2017, we should be very proud that over 78% of those students finished their first year of college without taking any developmental education, which is very, closely aligned to our college readiness rate. So not a surprise there. And this is a very similar pattern to previous years, but just showing where our students go if they enroll in college in Texas. The larger numbers of them going to four-year schools than to two-year schools. And those who do go to four-year schools tend to have higher average GPAs than those that go to two-year schools, indicating, a really high level of readiness to be successful in universities. And I'll hand it over to Mandy for just a minute.
Good evening, trustees. This is the accelerated instruction evaluation, which we are also required to present to you each year. And this is a fairly brief report. Can you click for me? So a little background, we are required by statute, again, to do this annually. Each school district is required for students who do not pass their EOC to provide accelerated instruction or interventions prior to the next assessment of that. And the district is required to pay for that out of district funds at no cost to the student, kind of goes without saying there. And then annually we are to evaluate the effectiveness of that program. I think it's back one. Yep. So accelerated instruction is a broad term that is not defined in statute. It is left to campuses and districts to determine what that consists of. It can consist of anything from sending a packet home with a student to after-school tutoring, any variety of support that the district or campus wants to provide to students who did not pass the EOC. And for the purpose of this review, the data that's on the next slide will not include students who withdrew, who were absent, or who didn't test for any reason. Also, students who enroll in the school district after the previous testing cycle, we do, of course, support them with the interventions, but these are offered, but they're not, the acceleration, but they're not included in these results. So here you'll see across the top of that larger matrix at the bottom there, you're going to see the different types of interventions that are provided at our high schools. So you'll see through a scheduled class or perhaps after school tutoring, Saturday interventions, etc. You can track the participation of the students across those. Some students will be captured or will go to more than one of these, but for this purposes we have them broken out. You can also see at the top of the EOCs that are administered, the number of students who were needing to retest. If you follow down along that column beside Algebra 1, Biology, and English 1, and then the number of students who actually submitted a scored test. That would be because occasionally students are absent or different things happen. So then if you take, for example, on Algebra 1, there were 219 scored tests, and go down to the failed meet total, you'll see under total 219. So you can see how the students fared on that next administration. And that concludes the accelerated instruction results.
Are there any questions, trustees? Ms. Fessa?
So I wanted to go back to the slide about attendance. And I had asked you a question. You provided me some great information on that. I think there's a misunderstanding in terms of most people probably think that we're funded by enrollment, like how many students we have enrolled, and then the state funds us based on enrollment. But the reality is we're actually funded by attendance. And so the question that I had asked was, if we increase our attendance by even 1%, what additional revenue would that bring for programs and teachers and raises to our district? And I just wanted to go ahead and ask that for the record, just so that people could understand the relationship between high attendance rates and our ability to provide the highest quality education, to have the resources to do that.
Yes.
I'll have to give credit where credit is due. Dr. Oddix did that calculation, so I think I'd prefer it if he answered.
Right. So every 1% is worth $3.8 million to us. So literally on a per child basis, it's kind of like a $50 decision a day because it amounts to $46 a day in terms of attendance for each child.
So thank you so much, just showing like how important it is to have have our kids be in school, and we're going to be talking about the calendar coming up and how important it is to maximize the highest attendance days and make sure that we're tailoring our schedule to making sure we're maximizing attendance, because it really has a huge impact on our ability to provide resources to our students, our teachers, our parents. That's how we're funded.
Mr. Chadwell?
Thank you. And I was going to say, I thought it used to be $34, but that's a couple years ago, so it's now $46 or so, you said, per day, per student. So, and then the attendance, they have to be there before 9 o'clock or something like that. Is that right? Or,
Yeah, I think is it 10 o'clock is the official time when
they call it anyway.
attendance is taken?
If you're going to go schedule it, get there, get counted first. So, but the question I had back to page 11 on here, and I think in 10 and 11 we talk about the domains. Again, would you explain that? That is, there's 40 other campuses. Is that right? Every campus in all the state is compared to 40 other campuses, 39. Is that correct? Is that still the scenario?
There's two different comparisons that happen in the accountability system, and one here in the school progress domain, the campuses are compared to campuses in an economic disadvantage band. So I'll just make up an example. Maybe your campus has between 35 and 40% economic disadvantage, and you'd be compared to your peers in that band. When we do the distinctions, that's when campuses are compared to 20 very similar peers, and they're matched on a variety of characteristics, not just economic disadvantage. Okay. So that's what you're thinking of there.
Okay. So the domains are into 20. There's 20, is that right? They're in a group of 20?
A group of 20.
And is it still where you could have a school, say, Anderson Mill and Berkman might be in the same group, but other districts across the state may not have them in there? Is that true still?
That's correct, yes.
It's kind of half scientific and half art. Is that true?
Well, I'm pretty sure they're all just computer-generated models, each one trying to get the set of campuses that
Sure.
are closest to yours on the variety of dimensions.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Moses?
I do have comments and questions, but I know Trustee Gonzalez is pressing her button for a minute, so I'll let her.
On ours is numbered slide 25, and it's talking about 63% are enrolled in Texas colleges or universities, and I probably have this same question every time we look at this report.
Yes.
Not trackable and not found. That equates to 38%. That's a fourth. What's going on there? Why are they not trackable and not found?
Let's see. Okay, I'm just glancing at my notes here. So not trackable, they're saying includes students with non-standard ID numbers that can't be used to match in higher ed institutions. So that's a relatively small number. The not found is just that they were not found in Texas using their matching protocols. Some of those students have gone to school outside of Texas. And very typical pattern for Round Rock ISD is about 9% of our students go out of state. So they would be in that not found category.
Okay, so out of state, almost.
Yes, the majority, because, and I did look it up, and now I believe our national student clearinghouse data for this year was around 68, 69%. So there's, still a little bit of not exactly lining up, but figure about 9% of those went out of state according to the National Clearinghouse records.
Now, are we able to track the ones that actually finish with a degree or certificate associates?
Yes, we do get that. Once the student graduates, that comes back in our annual request, and we know where they graduated from and what type of degree they received.
Oh, okay.
So
I'd like to see
bachelor's
that.
or
I don't know if we've ever seen that before.
2-year
but
degree.
That'd be great to see as well.
Okay. Yep, we can do that.
And this might be a silly question, but when we talk about the dropouts, what exactly are these kids that just disappear? Do they withdraw? Like, how do we classify dropout? What is the actual definition for dropout?
Ooh, I didn't prepare extensively to answer that question, and perhaps someone else can help me. But I'm really just thinking of it in terms of the code. You know, I
Right.
think it's 98. I wish Thomasine were here from Success, because she could answer a lot more about the efforts that they do make to seek kids out and bring them back into the district.
The number is low, and I absolutely believe
Yes.
that. I just wanted to know how we get to the definition of dropout.
If I can
someone
jump in
else
here,
help?
it's
Yes.
basically kids that we just can't find. They just quit coming to school, and our dropout prevention specialist, and especially the staff of Success, they're over the top and looking for these kids and going actually physically to look for them. But sometimes a kid moves away or, runs away or whatever it may be. And so that would contribute to that small number that are considered dropouts. But I know there are a lot of heroic efforts by all of our staff, especially at Success, to find these folks that didn't complete and get them back so they can complete. And that's ongoing as well. It's not just like, I'm going to look for you one time. They continue. So a lot of the kids, when they leave, we code them where they go. If they go out of state or they enroll in another school, we send their records. But on that very small percentage, those are kids that we just absolutely cannot find. And there's a lot of effort to look for them, continuing so.
And I will add this, that what's nice about getting the records back from TEA is that they are also checking in other Texas public schools. So we have that, we know that if they could be found in another school, they were found.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Moses.
Thank you, Madam President. And I'll just stay on this slide for a second, because I think it's pretty great to see that, just looking at our students who graduate and go to a four-year school, that you're going to 66% are starting their first year with a 3.0 or higher. That's a great way to start a college career. As somebody who maybe didn't start out quite that way, it's a big hole to dig out of. And so seeing our students start off on that track, really, I think that's a great sign to our parents and our community, saying, hey, not only are our kids, when they do graduate, should they choose to go to a Texas public school, they're there, but they're going to start off on the right track. And we're going to make sure that they're moving in a positive direction. And then if we could real quick go to slide 23. I mean, really, I just looking at our student discipline, I know we've had a lot of conversations about this, and I know there's a lot of work we're doing here, but we really just kind of hit a pause and think for a minute that, again, I don't know if these are these repetitive numbers, like individual students, or are they just...
I believe the way it's requested is that it's unique incidents,
Okay.
not unique students. So there could be repeated
Right.
students. Yes.
Yeah, so let's just say, for hypothetical, that it's all individual. Now, that's less than 1% of our total student population.
Yes.
That shows a lot how, again, the great work our staff does, and our counselors and our teachers do with working with our students, because that shows our kids behave. We have great kids, great families who are supportive, have great homes. What fortunately a lot of them do, that they make sure that their kids get to come to school, that they're prepared, they're behaving, and they're ready to learn. So I think another good shout out there to our staff for helping our families making that happen. And then just a quick comment on slide 4, our demographics. I know there was in the past, it was a different presentation, but we saw how the last 10 or so years our demographics have changed. And this just continues to highlight that. And I think when I see this, what it tells me is we need to continue as a district to do a good job of reaching out to the different pockets in our community. I mean, I look at the number of Asian and Pacific Islander, and that they can continue to grow, Asian especially there. That's a community that has significantly changed from a percentage standpoint from many years ago. So that's somewhere, and we know it's going to keep growing because people keep moving here, which is great. It's a great sign of a thriving school district, but we just need to make sure we continue to reach out and engage that community and make sure they know they're part of the district.
An interesting statistic that's not there is we have 93 languages spoken by our students in the district, so that emphasizes the point you're making.
All right, I just had one quick question actually on slide 24, where it says over 78% had completed a year of college. Is that slide says 63%, the one right before that Ms. Gonzalez asked about are enrolled in a college or university, and then on 24 it says 74 had completed a year without taking the developmental. Is that 78% of that 63%?
I think that's probably, I would want to put a little more thought to it, but yes, these are both sources of information from the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, so I don't think they could report about a student that they didn't know their whereabouts, right? So that, I believe that
I didn't
would
catch
be,
it the first time looking through, but as we were asking
that
questions, I
sounds
was
correct
like,
to me also.
okay,
Yes.
thank you. Are there any other questions, trustees? No. All right, thank you. All right, then we will move to item D, closed session. Pursuant to Texas. Oh, that's right. We have to take a recess. All right. So we will take a recess until 6:30. 4 minutes. All right, it's 7:10. We're going to call back to order. I don't know if there's any students in there that would like to help us lead the pledge, but we're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance and the Texas Pledge. Any students? No.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one individual.
All right. We're on item F, public comments at each monthly meeting.
Madam President.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry, we do have a motion coming out of closed.
Okay. I move to authorize the internal auditor to provide the board and Miles Bradshaw the information he has requested as part of his review of the complaint process.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed? None? 7-0. Thank you. Are there any other motions? Hearing none, then we are on public comment. At each monthly regular board meeting, the board will afford members of the public who sign up during the designated time an opportunity to speak to the board on items listed or not listed on the board agenda. Regarding matters of concern or interest to the district other than the character of any student, staff, or board member. Concerns or complaints regarding specific individuals should not be raised in public forum. They should be considered separately according to applicable board policies. The board requests that comments on any subject, whether positive or negative, be courteous and respectful. I would like to remind the audience and the viewers that the comments of the speakers reflect their own positions or opinions. No audience member will be permitted to engage in any conduct that is disruptive or threatening toward any speaker or other person. The board may not discuss or act upon any matter that is not listed under the action item portion of the agenda. Therefore, board members may not discuss the comments of speakers. Please understand that a lack of a response from board members does not indicate agreement or approval of the comments. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes to address the board. Mr. Steve Math, Vice President of the Board, will be the designated timekeeper. First up, we have Christella Erickson Collins, and after her will be Mary Walker.
Good evening. My name is Christelle Erickson Collins, and I'm here tonight to talk to you about the Williamson County Leadership Summit that's going to be held on Monday. I'd like to thank you all for being co-sponsors of that event, and for those of you who have RSVP'd for that, thank you very much for that. I think we all know that Round Rock ISD has racism issues, not unlike every other educational facility in the United States and other institutions as well. And that you're willing to engage in the conversation about how we address that, how we undo that, shows fortitude and strength on your part. And I commend you for that. I'd like to read the invitation in case there are some of you who have not yet RSVP'd, just so that you're clear on what this is about. This upcoming 6-hour event, designed exclusively for Williamson County systems and community leaders, will focus on developing a common analysis and understanding of the institutional and structural barriers that keep racial inequities in place. Nationally renowned equity consultant Ms. Joyce James will introduce her groundwater analysis as the framework for building effective strategies that lead to greater systems accountability and institutional change for the most vulnerable of populations. The time is always right to do what is right. Martin Luther King, Jr. The summit will be held on Monday from 9 until 4. We really encourage you all to show up. Thank you.
Mary Walker, and after that will be Stephanie Martin.
Yes, my name is Mary Walker. My issue is the dress code in school, the district-wide dress code. The policy that y'all set up, all of them are not following it the way it should be followed. There's just specific kids that are being dress code, and I have a problem with that. My grandbaby been in the system for 3 years at Chisholm. She's going to go through another 4 years at Round Rock High. I want to get this straightened out before it winds up affecting her learning and other kids that are having this issue. It was discussed with the principal. We were supposed to have a meeting. We sit down and have that meeting, but it got a little bit out of control. So we had to cancel it, and I'm still waiting to have it rescheduled. He has not rescheduled that meeting yet. This is something we need to take care of as soon as possible. Thank you. That's it.
Stephanie Martin, and after that will be Janine McNulty.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Okay. I spoke to y'all before last fall about issues of racism, transphobia, homophobia, and ableism at Early College High School. The board moved to conduct an investigation, to hire an outside investigator independent of the district. And I just wanted to report back to the board, no one's contacted me, no one's contacted anyone else who's spoken out publicly about this. So that's left us wondering, when's this investigation? And how will the public be updated on this investigation? Is there a deadline? What's going to happen? I'd also like to say that people still working at that school and students still attending that school are reporting that the administrator on leave is coming back. That's something that's out in the community, and people who work there and students who go to school there are hearing that. So there's a lot of tension around that. I haven't heard anything. I haven't read anything on the website, so this is my only avenue to speak to y'all and to the public, because I feel there needs to be some accountability. there needs to be some report back to the community. When we've reported these things to you and we've trusted you to follow through and do your due diligence, we need to know what that process is. I think that's only fair, given you guys have our kids in your hands. Thank you.
Janine McNulty, and after that will be John Gordon.
Hi. All right. Esteemed trustees, Superintendent Flores, Round Rock ISD staff, and community members, my name is Janine McNulty. I'm representing Round Rock ISD Voices for a Sustainable Future. We are a growing group of over 300 Round Rock ISD parents, students, employees, and community members. We do have a group present tonight, so if I can get 5 minutes this evening, I'd appreciate it.
No, we only do 3. If they want to sign up to speak, they would have had to sign up to speak.
Oh, has that changed?
Mm-hmm.
The group doesn't get 5 minutes? Okay, thank you. Our group's purpose is to promote and hasten the adoption of a modern district-wide environmental sustainability policy that will build sustainability into operations and education throughout Round Rock ISD. Our top priorities include the elimination of styrofoam lunch trays, development of a comprehensive and measurable district waste reduction plan, and evaluation of all district rooftops for solar. We're back in front of the board in 2020 to demonstrate our ongoing commitment to engaging in this important conversation. On December 5th, the Budget, Innovation, and Policy Committee met and directed operations to begin the work to draft an environmental sustainability policy. Round Rock ISD Voices was invited to participate in the process via the existing FUSE committee. We're grateful to the board and are encouraged, yet still looking forward to our first meeting. Yesterday, I received an update that a survey will be prepared to gather input, first from the internal stakeholders, in order to inform the direction and content of the sustainability policy. I'm told that this survey will have a wider distribution later. Round Rock ISD Voices agrees that gathering stakeholder input is a great place to start. We also want to ensure that, as best practice dictates, the survey is written to address and gather input across the organization, across all areas of the organization, operations as well as curriculum, food service, staff development, community engagement, administration, and so on. We look forward to providing input when asked. That said, I'd like to point out to the board that in the time since our December 5th meeting, Round Rock ISD has, by our very conservative estimates, added over 400,000 styrofoam trays to our area landfills. That's just since December 5th. Now, respectful of the new year and all the priorities the district is juggling, we ask the board to please maintain and promote a sense of urgency. Policy development is vital, but the ongoing impact of current practices may warrant action sooner than a comprehensive policy can be developed. Round Rock ISD has a particular opportunity to reduce styrofoam waste in 2020 with the renegotiation of the food services contract with Aramark. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time.
John Gordon, and after that will be Heather Johnson.
I want to be heard. Can everybody hear me? Okay. My name's John Gordon, and I'm representing the Williamson County Symphony Orchestra. Dr. Flores and trustees, thank you very much for allowing me to come speak to you. This is about an issue of the rehearsal space that we've occupied on Monday evenings for 17 and a half years at the Round Rock High School Band Hall. This past Monday, not this Monday, but the Monday before, I received word with no warning that at the end of this month, we would no longer be able to rehearse there. And the reason was stated was you changed directors of music. So first off, that came through one of the volunteers that was working for us, and she was resigning, and she said, oh, by the way, this and this. So I'm a little bit concerned. I would like y'all to look at the particular process of how we got even notified of this, because I am the chairman of the board, and we do have a published group of leaders, and I'm not sure who in the Round Rock High School is making this decision. Now, I did send you all information about this a week ago Thursday, and then your office got back to me and said we needed to talk to the high school principal. But I'd like to point out to you and really remind everybody, the Williamson County Symphony Orchestra is one of the top 5 symphony orchestras, community-based symphony orchestras, not in the area, not just in the state, but in the nation. Won 21 national awards in the last 5 years. We play free concerts for the people in this area. We played 4 free concerts this year. We've got 2 coming up. One out at basically at the Hill Country Bible Church, one at St. Vincent de Paul Church. The next one's coming up. It's going to be at First United Methodist Church, and then we'll be playing in Old Settlers Park. There'll be about 5,000 people that will attend those. That's a pretty sizable chunk of people for a full-blown orchestra concert in the area. A lot of communities don't have that, and it's free. So families, senior citizens, those that might not have a lot of money are able to come out there. And one of the ways we are able to put on these outstanding concerts is we have a rehearsal on Monday night from 7 to 9:30 at Round Rock High School Band Hall, unless the band has an issue or the city. What's the blue? Is that one? I mean, yellow. 30 seconds? Unless they have something, and then we leave. We have never had a problem discussed with us. We're happy to discuss if there's something that's an issue. But I would ask the trustees, this is something that you want the school district supporting because it's so beneficial. And they're all volunteers, about 100 musicians. Many of them are former Round Rock ISD musicians. Thank you.
Thank you. Heather Johnson, and after that will be Lisa Moore. Hello, I'm Heather Johnson. I'm a parent of a couple of 6th graders who are at Deer Park Middle School nowadays, and I'm here to talk about the fact that we still use styrofoam in our cafeteria. So I'm here with RRISD Voices, and it is 2020, and I think we can all agree that styrofoam is not the best thing on earth. And I believe we have a 5-year contract for our cafeteria and our food with Aramark that's coming up. And as we look at bids for the future, I'm hoping that we could be perhaps like Leander ISD, who have reusable trays, or Alston ISD, who have compostable trays, or any option other than styrofoam. So however we go through the bid process, as you tell them what we're interested in and seeing for however long the next contract will be, I hope that y'all will consider something other than styrofoam. Thank you. Lisa Moore, and after that, Tara Munoz.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Moore, and I am a interested concerned taxpayer here in Round Rock, and I am reading a letter from a Round Rock ISD educator. Round Rock ISD claims to be a destination district where every child matters, and a district which prides itself in doing equity work so that all voices can be heard. However, equity work is about holding one another accountable by having courageous conversations, even when those conversations may be uncomfortable to talk about. It is beyond time that we have one of those tough and courageous conversations. I wish this conversation was just about the racist, homophobic, transphobic, and ableist comments that are reportedly under investigation at Early College High School. But unfortunately, that situation is not an isolated occurrence in our district. Students of color are not safe in our schools, especially when we continue to allow other students, staff, and leadership, namely principals, to blatantly harass, refuse, and accuse the very dignity and existence of students or staff purely based on their racial identity. Unfortunately, this treatment doesn't stop at race. We have students and staff of all backgrounds, some of who intersect multiple identities such as LGBT, trans, differentially abled, and those whose faith background is different from our own, who have been harassed and refused by their peers, and worse yet, harassed, refused, and accused by staff members and leaders in our community who should serve as a safe haven and shelter for us all. All you have to do is walk the halls of any school or sit down with any student who fits within the other than category to learn that we are failing them. You will hear stories of black students being told, whether as a joke or not, by their white peers that of course you failed the test, you're black, as if blackness is synonymous with failure. You have teachers turning black kids away from their pre-AP and AP classes because that's a mistake. This black kid is not on their roster. You will hear stories of black students telling their teacher a white kid called them the N-word, and that teacher not reporting the incident because the teacher didn't hear it, so it must not have happened, despite witnesses saying they heard it too. As I said before, this discrimination extends beyond race. We have LGBT students who cannot safely walk into a locker room without being harassed and in some cases assaulted by their peers. Or you have trans students who will report certain teachers refusing to use their preferential pronouns and name because that teacher doesn't believe or agree with quote unquote that lifestyle and cannot be bothered, who can't go against their own moral stance to quote unquote oblige that student. When we harass, refuse, and accuse our students and staff, we are creating a hostile learning and work environment in which no one can fully thrive. We are sending a message to the entire community that we don't value them, that they don't matter. But they do. We are supposed to be a destination district where every child matters, but I'm here today to tell you that this district does not value every child if we continue to allow for some of our students to be harassed, refused, and accused solely based on their otherness. It's time we step up and have the courageous conversation.
Thank you. Tara Munoz, and after that will be Rosie Marcantoni.
Hello. I'm here. I would like to propose more plant-based food options in the district cafeterias, something like Meatless Mondays, Fit and Green Fridays, or something similar. The most important action we can take is to lessen our meat and dairy consumption. I spoke at a prior meeting in the fall and gave the stats about the environmental impact of consuming these products, so I won't go into detail. But the research does show that the best thing we can do for our environment is to leave meat and dairy off our plates. I'm not only a parent with students in the district, but I'm also a substitute. When I sub at Round Rock ISD schools, I'm astounded by the amount of waste produced in the cafeteria. I would estimate that at one elementary school, per day, there's about 20 large garbage bags thrown away. I'm even more astounded by the amount of food waste. Many students, so I was told that each student must take a dairy milk per some district or federal rule. Many students do not even consume this milk. And it saddens me that something that was like a lifetime of torture for the animal and then their product is thrown away without a second thought. So I come as a voice for the voiceless, the animals, as well as to encourage the district to take proactive measures to decrease our adverse environmental impact. Not only would plant-based food options at school help with our sustainability measures, but it would also be a lot healthier for the students. With food-related diseases increasing, such as diabetes, high cholesterol, obesity, etc., I would imagine that parents and doctors would appreciate healthier and happier children from healthier food choices at school. I feel that we should make the best decisions for our children's future with the knowledge that we have. Climate change is a reality, but we have the knowledge to slow it down or at least help in some way. Round Rock ISD can take this information and make some positive changes for our future. I have a booklet here that I would like to leave with you all to look at, and that's it for today. Thank you.
Thanks. Rosie Marcantoni, and after that will be Lorraine Gonzalez.
Oh, I'm so sorry, I forgot my. Hello, good evening. My name is Rosie Marcantoni, and I'm actually here today I spoke a few months ago to the board, my concerns regarding early college high school administration, wherein my son attended early college high school in 2018 to 2019 school year. I want to show a pattern that I believe the administration constantly discriminated against my son and other students, violating his disability rights. As far as I'm concerned, my son's 504 was not complied by, especially since the administration never gave me a written 504 plan. When I met with the administration back in October of 2018, I kept trying to have open conversations with the administration, and they were never favorable. for my son. Even though I provided medical recommendations to the administration, I was constantly lied to and said that ACC would not allow for accommodations, so the administration was not going to allow accommodations. After informing the administration that ACC provided me this documentation where they signed off on my son's accommodations, and Mr. Luis Garza of ACC informed me that the administration was constantly saying those kinds of things, and he told the administration to stop saying those things, that they were not true. I presented this documentation to the administration, and it seemed like my relationship or lack of relationship with the administration got worse, and she retaliated against my son. I kind of feel like if Round Rock ISD, my son never had problems in elementary school. His actual old principal is here from his elementary school, middle school, and his current high school don't give us any problems with his accommodations. It's a very easy process. They're professional and kind. Why couldn't early college administration be the same and allow him a few accommodations? I believe this is because they didn't want to, and I feel like someone in this position should not be able to return to Round Rock ISD. I know I wouldn't want her here. I understand that there is an investigation being performed at Round Rock ISD, but no one has contacted me or anyone else that I know of. I have an 8-page letter that I have of witnesses that I have provided the OCR, and I'm not sure if they've given that to Round Rock ISD or not yet. But I have tons of witnesses. I'd be happy if anybody could contact me if there is still an investigation going on. I'm happy to send all of the board members an email regarding all of this so you can all understand. It's very long documentation. It's probably 3 binders that are about this big. Anyway, that's it. Thank you so much.
And our last speaker will be Lorraine Gonzalez.
Good evening. My name is Lorraine Gonzalez, and I represent Stony Point High School PTSA. So I'm going to let it on left with a good note. I want to brag about my Tigers. I love my Tigers. Y'all, everybody knows that. We have received the Golden Apples since October of this year. We were able to increase our staff appreciation this past semester with the support of Dr. Watson, our principal, while he was making the hamburgers and outside in the heat in August, and all his staff at that time. At that time, they all joined the PTSA. The other things that we've done, and this is towards the students of Tigers have the Tiger in Service hours. The seniors have 12,000 volunteer community hours. We've increased on our community scholarships through donations. Our mini grants were used for the IB students to attend a field trip visiting the National Museum of the Pacific War. On the 29th of January, we are inviting our future Tigers of the class of 2024 to come out with their parents and their family members to see what Stony Point has to offer for their school year next year. We also open it up to our booster clubs. This is when they can get their spirit wear and they'll be ready for next year. On a personal note, on January the 28th, we invite each and every one of you to attend at 7 p.m. at the Stony Point High School gym when the men basketball team honor the memory of Sergeant Paul Rivera against Cedar Ridge. That's a personal note to me. His little brother is my son-in-law. In April, we have the Wizards basketball from coming out to play against schools, our feeder schools, so they can see how it is to play against professional basketball team. And all that money is going towards mini grants for the teachers and scholarships. Last thing, Stony Point is the only high school in the state of Texas to be the Presidential Volunteering Service Award on campus. And on a campus, we have received the Golden Pin from the United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes our public comment. So we will now go to item G, Superintendent's Report.
Thank you, Madam President, and also thanks to everybody for a wonderful start to a new year as well as a new decade. And with that, as you can see, the sign behind us or in front of you, thank you, school board members, for all that you do. January in the state of Texas is School Board Appreciation Month, and so we do thank our board for launching the next generation. So with that being said, we have one report tonight, and that is going to be given by Dr. Kenneth Audix, our Chief Financial Officer, and he will provide our monthly financials. So, Dr. Audix.
Thank you. Good evening, President Weir, trustees, and Dr. Flores. I'll share with you the financial results for November, starting with the general fund. For November, we had total revenue of $21.9 million, expenses of $35.7 million. On a year-to-date basis, our revenue is at $60.6 million, have expenses of $173.7 million. On a year-to-date basis, our revenue is trending about $1 million better than budget, and expenses are coming in $9.3 million better than budget, so both of those are on a favorable trend line. Our fund balance at the end of November for the general fund was $94.8 million. For food service had income in November of $1.6 million, expenses of $1.6 million. Year-to-date, revenue is $8 million, expenses are $6 million, so the food service has got a $2 million favorable bottom line year-to-date and has a fund balance at the end of November of $12.4 million. Debt service has income in November of $5.8 million. There's no expenses. Really, the only expenses we incur in debt service are the semi-annual payments that happened in August and February. Our year-to-date income is $8.9 million. Our expenses, which are the semi-annual payment that happened in August, was $83.7 million. We have a current fund balance of $30.2 million, and our next debt payment is scheduled for February the 1st at $19 million. In terms of bonds, we had revenue in November of right at $300,000, expenses of $1.7 million. Year-to-date, we have $1.8 million of revenue and $18.2 million of expense, and have a current outstanding fund balance at the end of November of $202 million. For capital projects, had expenditures in the month for $730,000. Year-to-date expenses are $5.3 million, with a fund balance of $18.7 million. So those are the financial update for the month of November. You also have an updated budget calendar for the 2021 budget calendar in your packet that Patty put in there. This is, other than one change, this is what was sent to you in the board update last week. So our budget process will sort of officially kick off on February 3rd with a PIB committee meeting. There'll be another one on March the 9th, and then with the intent to have the full sort of like financial rundown at the March 26th meeting. The following week, we'll have TASB here to present a market study analysis to the board and basically tell you what the recommendation is going to be in terms of pay raises and positions for next year. The intent then is to come back to the board for approval of that plan at the April 16th meeting. Then what's currently on your calendar as a May 4th meeting, come to find out that there's an employee recognition on that date as well, so we're probably going to move that date from May the 4th to May the 11th if that works for the board. Then we've got a tentative, if needed, board workshop scheduled for June the 4th. If we need it, we can have it. If we don't, we can scratch it. And then we'll be asking for budget adoption at the June 18th meeting, and then approval of the tax roll and tax rates at the September 7th meeting. So that's the current plan. I and my team we've started. We're into the budget process now, working numbers. Going to be talking with the demographer tomorrow in terms of enrollment projections, and so we're budget process is here, and we're working on it and looking forward to sharing it's a series of, putting information together, but we'll be ready to share a significant amount of information with the PIB committee on February the 3rd.
Mr. Math?
Yeah, question. Going back to the revenue and expenditures, obviously the big expenditure is in instruction, and I don't know if this is good news or bad news, but we're running about $7 million favorable. That's somewhere between 6 and 7%. Could you elaborate on that difference?
Right. So where that comes from is that if you remember back, like every year when we build a budget, and we've had this sort of conversation, is that you budget to be fully staffed, and since most of our staff is in instruction, when you have unfilled positions, and we have a situation where the positions that were approved in the current budget year, there's several $1 million of those positions that at this point haven't been filled, and so that's an immediate savings, and then just unfilled positions is really the driver of that, is simply those kind of components. We budget fully staffed. We didn't hire all the positions that were approved in the budget for this year, and then you just have the natural turnover and vacancies throughout the year as well.
Yeah, so that's why I said I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing that we're $7 million favorable. Do we have that many vacancies? Is that higher than normal?
Yeah, and what I can do, I will get with Annette, and I can, to be precise, we'll get a vacancy report run to where I can then share with you and everybody, like maybe put it in the next week's board update of simply, okay, here's the vacancies that we have, so that you will be able to see what that number is. Okay.
Ms. Bessa?
So on our February 3rd board meeting, are we going to, I know that you've been working the whole school year on your efficiency audits. Is that when we're going to get the presentation on kind of your findings?
So, efficiency is a thing that's not going to stop. And at February 3rd, there'll be certainly some things to talk about. There's going to be others that are continuing on. So you'll get where we're at that point in time. Annette's team on the staffing piece, we're having a meeting at the end of next week to get the feedback from that group in terms of what their recommendations are. So we'll have that information to share by February the 3rd. And I've got several things that we're in the mix of quantifying and making a decision on, hey, is this something that we think we can pull the trigger on and do this next year? So we definitely have plenty of things to talk about. It will not be on February 3rd. Every idea that we're going to have by the time of the next budget will be presented at February 3rd, because some of these ideas, literally, there's ideas that at the start of this week hadn't had the idea yet, and now we've got the idea. So there's ideas that, as I hear them, as I think about them, then we start quantifying them and seeing if they're viable to do, and then you quantify, okay, how much would it cost to implement it? What's the savings? How long's the payback? What's the value add? And so we're doing all of those things.
I mean, I wouldn't imagine, though, that those types of ideas that are coming in like at the last second or before, not necessarily last second, but I mean, we've been talking big numbers. I mean, we've had this discussion that our ability to give staff a raise is dependent on the efficiencies that we can find. I mean, those are your words. So I'm expecting that when we come to this meeting that these numbers are millions that they've been fleshed out. So I would hope that if we're considering changes that are millions of dollars, that we have soon, that we would know what those would look like. That was my expectation, because you told us in January that you would have that.
Yeah, and these are millions of dollar ideas. And we have a meeting, there's the efficiency team with the NETS group. The end of next week, there's another meeting with Dr. Flores, Dr. Presley, Terry, and I next Thursday. And in addition to some other pieces, these are millions of dollar ideas, and they're significant dollar amounts.
Okay, well, I look forward to hearing about them as soon as possible, hopefully in the February 3rd meeting.
Yep.
Ms. Feller?
So this isn't the first time that you've talked to us about the excess in the food service fund balance. Can you talk about how we got such a large fund balance, and then the intentionally making purchases to exceed? What are the requirements around that? What that money could be spent on, and what are the initiatives that are planned to spend down that balance?
Right. And so in terms of the buildup, since I just got here in March, I can't give you hey, how long is it? I can put together a ending fund balance over the last several years and put that together. And since Yana is who I lean on in terms of, okay, what are the planned projects? I don't have them off the top of my head, but I could do it in the board update of simply I can give you both a history of, okay, what is our fund balance? How long has it taken us to get to the point that we're at? And then, quantify this project, here are the dollar amounts of that planned spend down.
So I don't even really need specifics on that, but just what are the types of things that you can spend the food service fund balance on? Is it extra loaves of bread, or is it on cafeteria improvements? Like that.
It would
That's
be cafeteria
kind of
improvements, like capital improvements, serving lines, equipment,
trays, or
significant type of thing.
Furniture. Like, I just didn't know exactly what that money had to be spent on.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Right. I don't see any more lights, but I want to double check since I'm still no good with these lights. All right. All right. So if there are no more questions, we will move on to H, action items for consideration by consent. Was everybody? You want to? Go ahead.
Yeah. Madam President, I move that we adopt action items H1 through H10 by consent.
Second. So we have a motion and a second to adopt items H1 through 10 by consent. Is there any discussion? Mr. Chadwell?
So got a comment on on F1 in the agenda for the minutes for December meeting. F1.
Oh, inside that attachment.
Yeah, inside that attachment. Just clarification. It says there is a motion made by Steve Math for Amy Ware in a second, and there was a motion by another. Anyway, down below, just for clarification, it just says all those in favor, yay, and all those opposed, nay. I don't know how we would adjust that, Mr. Ponick, but otherwise, it's in the recording. Is that good enough for now? Just there was two motions for two officers. Okay. You understand that, Ms. Aguilera? So we get a chance. Okay.
So do we have to include that in our adoption?
There's a motion in here on the previous page that talks about the motion for president, but then I think there was only one vote.
That's right. There's just
one
one vote.
The first vote was prevailing, so
okay.
We can take the second motion. So it's correct.
It's correct, but I think the announcement of the results was clear, and I would ask you to clarify that. Do you think it's clear, then you would have to.
It just says there's a motion for president, a second, a motion for another president, a second. Chadwell, close the nominations. There's a motion. It just seems like it's the wording. Maybe it's just the order. It just says, then it says the votes 4-3, but it doesn't say which one.
I would think that it may help just clarify.
Okay.
Now, the motion says Steve Math nominated Amy Ware for president, Corey Vesta's second nomination, then the yeas, the nays, and the motion passed. It's very clear.
Okay. All right, I'm fine with it as it is, and it's just, okay.
Okay. So is there any other discussion? Then I think we have a motion and a second to adopt items H1 through 10 by consent. And we're good on the minutes. All right. All those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Did you raise your hand, Amber?
I raised my hand.
Okay. So 7-0. Sorry. All right. Item I1, the 2020-21 academic calendar draft options. Dr. Flores.
Thank you, Madam President. The 2021 academic calendar draft options will be presented by Christina Snow and assisted by Annette Vieira. And it can take as long as we'd like, and as many questions as you have, that's fine. This is an important topic, but we're prepared. I know that you've read the packet, but you might want clarification, so we'll just hit some of the highlights. So without further ado, Ms. Vieira.
Good evening, President. Dr. Flores and board members. We're here tonight. As you know, Christina Snow has worked with a calendar committee, to develop the 21-22 recommendations that you've received in your board update. She's going to show that to you now and offer any answers to questions you may have or discussion.
Good evening. As you know, I've presented to you some information from coming out of our academic calendar committee. We have been meeting. You know that we have, last year you already have approved next year's calendar, and we are working 2 years in advance. So this is the 2021-2022 school year recommendations that are coming out at this point in time. We are looking just to present this to you at this point in time to get some input. We are also going to be going to our community and our staff to get more input after tonight's meeting to come back to you next month for action. All right. So in the past, we have had criteria presented to you. The criteria has not changed as we have gone through to this year. So we really want to just focus on our drafts as she is bringing those up. And we can go right to option one. Option one that is being recommended looks very similar to what we have this year and last year, and for next year, as a matter of fact. We have a Thursday start date, 2 paired professional development days in October, January, February, and ending by Memorial Day. So it looks extremely similar to what we're used to in the last few years. Meets all the minutes, and does bank 2 days worth of minutes in case of bad weather. Let's see here. And then option 2, which is a little bit different, and we're excited to share this option with you, is to give everyone something else to look at. Does still end by Memorial Day, but the idea would be to decouple our professional development days to possibly spread those out so we could have some more ongoing professional development and follow-up throughout the year. In order to do this, we looked at spreading those out so that we would try to have almost one per month, same number. We did move one of them out of the pre-beginning of the school year, August, to September, so we'd have a late September professional development day. We'd maintain our October 11th, which is Columbus Day, and that would be a parent-teacher conference day still with elementary. November 1st would be a professional development day. We decided to maintain the 2 days in January. We found through the past that the teachers and staff feel that that's very important coming back to start the second semester. February 21st, which is President's Day, would still remain a staff development day, but we took that second February day and moved it to March 11th, which is the day before spring break. We have Georgetown ISD, their current calendar has a Friday before spring break as a professional development day, and the newly adopted Leander ISD calendar has the Monday after spring break. So this isn't a new idea. One of the things that we are looking at is we have very poor attendance rates on that day before spring break, and so this might be a way to just mitigate that with having our students off that day and having our teachers here to do some professional development. So this is, again, almost the same, except the days are spread out and we do start the school year 1 day earlier. After tonight, we look to send out a survey to our community and our staff starting tomorrow. It will be out for about 2 weeks. It will go through February 2nd. As I've done in the past, we will give you information in detail prior in a board update on those survey findings, and the committee will come back and make a final recommendation for you to hopefully take action on in the February board meeting. Do you have any questions?
Ms. Bessa.
Well, I was kind of excited about option 2, honestly. I thought, I asked for some attendance statistics, and you're right, our attendance really drops off the day before they start the spring break, and so I think if we can have that as a day off, then we would see better attendance and thus more revenue for our and more learning hours. So all good. I also was excited to see the November 1st because I love advocacy, and our students signed this petition, like 10,000 of them gave us a petition to have the day after Halloween off, and I just like showing them that their advocacy has an effect, that day is now a proposed day, and so I'm excited to hear what the parents have to say. I did want to I asked for some statistics. I just wanted people to understand like the differences in attendance on these days. So can you share a little bit about what you shared with me in regards to why we're considering those days in terms of increased absences?
November 1st, while you might think that the attendance really drops off, it doesn't show a dramatic change on November 1st. But the day before spring break, we have had some big number drops. We did some pulling randomly of days, and typically most days we run at about 96.5% attendance. But on the day before spring break, March 9th of 18, we had a 90.4% attendance rate. And last 2019, March 15th, we had an 87.5% attendance rate. So it's really poor on that day. It's unfortunately known as Senior Skip Day and with kids, and we try to avoid that. And we want kids in school. We don't want them missing class.
I just had one quick question then because I don't see any lights. So you said Georgetown is already doing that the Friday before spring break?
Yes.
Do you have any data? I mean, did it just bump over to Thursday though? I mean, are people just leaving earlier and earlier?
That is something that could happen, and it's something, I think in all of these there's pros and cons and things to watch. This is, I believe, their first year they're doing it, so they haven't yet done it. It's on their calendar for this school year. And the newly adopted one for Leander is the Monday after for next year.
Mr. Chadwell?
Good. So when is the college spring breaks? That was always an issue. Is that lined up now? Because one year it was off by week.
Exactly.
That was a big problem.
We have always been aligned to UT, and that is what we try to stay with, because University of Texas then usually dictates what ACC does, and we have so many of our students in dual credit classes, we need to be aligned to ACC. The last few years, this year and last year, UT and A&M have had opposing weeks. So that has been an interesting thing that usually they're aligned. But you're traditionally going back, looking at, usually they take the middle week in March. It's just that we didn't have a clear middle week the last two years. The truth is, at this point, they are not scheduled out that far. We are ahead of them. And so in the event that they were to not have that as their week off for spring break, we would have to come back and do an amendment so that we would be aligned to the ACC. So our dual credit students would have that correct for them.
Yeah, thank you.
You bet.
All right. Any other questions? All right. I think we're good. Thank you for the presentation. So now we will go to I2. Board use of online message board. Mr. Math.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I believe that this is a topic that came up last August, and I was on family vacation. I wasn't able to attend, but I did watch on the video. There are positives and negatives to a message board. I've given it a lot of thought. I personally believe that the positives outweigh the negatives or potential negatives. Many of us, in fact, I think all four of us that were elected in November, fielded many questions during the campaign on transparency. And I think that this is a giant step forward in transparency. We've also been faced with challenges of potential walking quorums over the last year or so. And I think that having a message board maybe would help solve or at least mitigate that potential issue. So I think it's worth having a conversation. in an effort to address the concerns of those that have concerns, I'd like to propose four items that we adhere to. Number one is before we vote to move forward and launch a message board, we should allow all trustees the opportunity to weigh in and voice their concerns or offer suggestions so that we could help develop parameters around that message board and guidelines. We probably can't make everybody happy, but I think if we listen to everyone's concerns and take them seriously and address them, we could at least do the best that we can. Number two, I think we need to develop a user manual. So once we launch, if we launch, we do have documentation for all the parameters and rules around it, who could post, when, how, et cetera. I believe that the City of Austin has developed a user manual, and that seems to be a good practice. Number three, I think we should engage the assistance of Dr. Drew Howard to make sure that anything we do is consistent with the framework and principles of Lone Star governance. Dr. Howard could help keep us within those parameters. And number four, I think that we should establish a time period for review. And I'm proposing 6 months, where if we launch, we revisit in 6 months to see how's it working. And if it's working, great. If it's not, we'll revisit it and see what we could do. So, with that, I'm prepared to make a motion, but I'd like to let others weigh in.
Ms. Gonzalez.
Mr. Math, you hit on like three of my points that I think that we had not discussed, and that's best practices and a user manual. So we're just not going in there willy-nilly and potentially violating some sort of law. So I appreciate you bringing that up. I take issue with any kind of model from the City of Austin. They don't even really know how to deal with a homeless situation that is actually more of a mental health and drug addict situation. So I do think there's a lot of things that we need to talk about before we take a vote on this again. But thank you, Mr. Math.
Mr. Chadwell.
I'll make a comment. I think those are great guidelines, and as we brought this up, I think it was the August meeting, we did bring it up, and that's when you were out, Mr. Math, is that right, in England, and so you missed it. But I do like the one about doing a 6-month review, having guidelines, and then, of course, having LSG, Lone Star Governance, always monitor it. Again, I think it's one of these things that we can try it, we can tweak it, and we can always turn it off if later on we don't like it. But in the effort to be transparent and expedite our meetings, I think we can make a lot of use out of it. So I like the idea, and certainly put a limit on it. 6 months, we put a schedule on it to review it, and then we go from there.
Mr. Moses.
Thank you, Madam President. And Trustee Math, I do want to thank you for your 4 points. I'll get into some of my concerns here in a moment, but if this gets moved forward with, I think those 4 points will be key in making this be something that we don't inadvertently run afoul of, because I think there's great potential of that. Of course, that's never intended, but we're all human, and I think this presents an opportunity or situation where we could, or one of us could very easily misstep unintendedly. But I think that is something that before it were to be voted on and adopted, that be some type of training and the user manual along with that, so we knew exactly what we were voting on operated. I'm hesitant to vote on something if I don't know how it's going to work or what the rules are, and if there's not a universal agreement on this board how the rules are going to go. So I think that I'm with you on developing those before we were to move forward with anything. I do take a little bit of an issue with your comment on transparency, because being on this board for 3 years now, I've learned a lot. One thing is that everyone's definition of transparency is different. And what someone thinks is transparent, like having these meetings, having our committee meetings, being out in the community, having things posted online, that's transparent. Others seem to have a little bit of a moving target on that. So I want to make sure that what we're doing isn't just something to say we're transparent, but something's actually active. And I think one way that be more transparent is something we've talked about. We're doing with the board. I think we're doing this, of course, with the boundary conversation, and we're talking about doing this afterwards, is having that two-way communication. Going out and actually engaging with the community face-to-face. I'm afraid now what we're doing is instead of finding ways to engage with each other face-to-face, we're putting a screen and a keyboard in front of us. And I think we should be finding more ways to engage with each other one-on-one. I'm not really aware of a walking quorum issue. I mean, maybe someone is, and if that's the issue, well, simple rule is don't do it. Stop doing it. And if that's a concern, then let's talk about it, and that'd be a great topic for a team of 8 to talk through to make sure that we are all aware of what those are, and if someone has their inadvertently misstep, correct it and move forward. I think also this is a good topic for us to consider at Team of 8 because we need to make sure we're communicating better together. Now, we're still relatively a new board, relatively new officers. So we want to make sure we're communicating and taking advantage of the tools we have available first before perhaps we create something different. So I say all that just to, again, thank you for creating these 4. Clearly, I still have a lot of concerns, and we can get into those more if we'd like. But I think, from what I hear you is that, if I heard you correctly, tell me I heard you wrong. All we're doing now is saying we're going to look at developing a user manual for this.
Actually, I would like to move forward with the implementation, giving us all, obviously, an opportunity to weigh in along the way before it launches. So my motion, should I just make my motion?
Go ahead. We can talk after you make the motion.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll do it. I wrote it down so I got every word right, but I move to authorize the creation of an online message board as permitted by law and to review its effectiveness in 6 months.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Now, is there any more discussion? Mr. Moses?
Yeah, Madam President, I talked to you last week. Have we reached out to TASB to get any kind of guidance from them on this?
No, I started just personally yesterday with the Board Officers Academy with David Kumpel, but it was just an introductory step. So he and I were going to do one-on-one, but we haven't had that opportunity yet.
Because I think, again, for me, before I could even look at approving this, I would want to I would rather have the user manual done, the guidelines done, the training done, weigh in from TASB. I mean, think about this. This law has been on the books for 7 years. For 7 years. And really the only entity that's done it successfully is the City of Austin. And really the only one that's really tried. So that, to me, the fact that it's been in the books for 7 years and they're the only ones that have done it gives me pause. Because it's like, why, this is such a good idea, why has nobody else done it? So I ask us, again, to just pause on this. I'm not saying, clearly I believe that we all can see what's happening, that there's support enough here, support for it. But I would say that, we took 7-8 months on a bond. We took a year and a half on safety and security. Surely taking another month or so to develop a user manual and guidelines to go along with this is not out of bounds.
So I'd like to do it, and how we do it is for discussion. And I think there's precedence. Take the police department. We voted on moving forward with that as well without having policies and procedures solidified.
Well,
wait, Ms. Feller has, okay.
Sorry.
Ms. Feller?
So you actually brought up what I was going to talk about is when we talked about the MOU with the Williamson County Sheriff's Department, we authorized me to go forward in writing the MOU and things like that. And I really like the 4 points that you brought up. But unfortunately, those 4 points are included in your motion. So if it's not included in our motion, then it's not a directive from the board of what we're going to do. So perhaps a middle ground that I could get behind for sure is making a motion to create the manual, make sure that it's consistent with LSG, develop the timeline, put all of that framework in, and put a deadline on it like we did with the MOU. Perhaps it's the February meeting or it's the March meeting. You know, I would say 30 to 60 days. We would probably not need more than that to develop those guidelines and then come back and know exactly what we're voting on. Because as it says right now, we don't really know what that user manual is. So it's hard to vote on. While the framework of the message board is there based on the City of Austin, how it's actually going to be implemented within Round Rock ISD is still very obtuse. So if we took the first step of what we talked about, that it sounds like a lot of people are in agreement with, then that be part of the motion to create the user guide, the user manual, the procedures, whatever it is, make sure it's in alignment with law, and then vote on that, and then go to the next step of, based on this policy and this framework of when we're going to review it, go to the creation of the actual, or the I believe it's already been created, so it would just be the implementation of it. So that would be my preference in how we would proceed at this point.
Mr. Moses.
Thank you, Madam President. And since Dr. Howard's here, would you come forward and just talk about, I know you've had some conversations with us about this, but how you could see this if it does fit inside the Lone Star governance model?
Red means good then, huh? Yeah, I've written down just a few notes, and I've had a few conversations with a couple of you, and conversation when we set the agenda. So I'll just kind of talk from both sides. So I see some potential positives with the message board. I think it could potentially streamline board communication. It could help with some timely discussions, more time to review information, possibly get the agendas out quicker and have information in front of you in a more timely manner. Some of the potential negatives that I think could arise, and again, this is preliminarily thinking through this. We hadn't done this in Lone Star governance. So, possibly on the message board, some items being taken out of context. If you just take a snippet of, here's a comment from a board member, was that really in the entire context of what that comment was trying to say? Potentially getting more into the day-to-day operations of the school. If you have conversations that are more conversations that should be had with the superintendent amongst each other, I think that's a dangerous line that we just have to make sure we don't cross. And you have a constraint already set up to do that, so I'll help hold you accountable to that. And then if you decide to move towards implementing a new system, I think it's also relevant to look at what current systems do you have in place that could do the same thing, or if you move to this one being a better system, what current systems could be abandoned to make time for this new system? Because the reason you do a new system is it's easier and better than what you currently have. But that's just what I see as potential positives or potential negatives. I think you got counsel here to make sure you stay within the legal boundaries and it's used legally and utilize them. The fear that I have, not fear, the comment that I would have in staying within the boundaries of Lone Star governance is that this communication with board members doesn't take the place of the two-way communication that you have with community members, and that's where the priority has to stay with creating those methods where superintendent, administration work with board members, go out in the community, advocate, have good two-way discussions back and forth with community members, whereas this message board, in my understanding of it, wouldn't be used for that type of communication. It'd be more for board member to board member. So I think you just have to make sure that the priority is two-way communication with your community in collaboration with administration and board members, and keep that as the priority. And then lastly, the Team of 8 training that's coming up in February, my thoughts is that's a great opportunity, whatever decision is made today, to if you postpone and want to take action later, or you take action today and want to look at those 4 points, I think that's a great opportunity at the February Team of 8 training to address those and look at how that could fit. What other questions do you have?
I think that was helpful, and I like the idea of if we could just postponing this to get some of these procedures in place so we know exactly what it is we're voting on. Because Mr. Matt, to your point, I think the difference between this and the police department was that, and we all know this, that if administration had already been doing that, people would have criticized it and said, "See, this is what they wanted to do all along." So the length of time we took forced them to sit there and not have a plan, but now we have time constraints coming, so we have to do something. There's really no rush. If we're going to do something that no school district in the state of Texas has done ever, wouldn't we want to take our time and get it right? Again, that's what I'm saying, is let's take the time, let's get it right, let's get our user manual in place, get our protocols in place, because I feel like right now, and I can look at the community and say that the vast majority of the community trusts and appreciates Round Rock ISD. You see that evident by the fact, like you saw today, over 21,000 members of the PTA. We saw it tonight in the data we got back from how we continue to outperform our state and region academically. We see it by how we have our business partners keep on the partner us. We have their trust and belief right now. All it takes is one of us going on there and stepping outside of our lane, and that could blow it up. So let's not take that risk yet. Let's make sure we have it all right first.
Ms. Gonzalez, you've been waiting patiently. Thank you.
No, I just wanted to speak to Trustee Feller, what she said about the framework, how important it is to build framework before you build the product. It's kind of like putting the cart in front of is that right? And not thinking it through. So I would feel better, because there were 3 components that I had thought of as well, if we could have that discussion together as a whole before we take action of going ahead and launching the message board, to have those thoughtful conversations about exactly how it's going to operate. Because to the best of my knowledge, the only message board like this, and the one we modeled, is from the city of Austin. There is not one by a school district. So if we're going to create something from the ground up, we start with the manual, we start with the best practices, we start with the framework. And I would be much more comfortable with that, depending on what that's going to look like.
Mr. Math?
Yeah, a couple of points. One is to address Dr. Howard's, I don't know if it's a concern, a comment. Anything that I'm envisioning is to supplement the face-to-face communication that we currently have, not in any way to replace it. It's all to supplement and to enhance. And then the other general comment, I know we're talking about let's be measured. It's a darn message board. We're not creating a curriculum. We're not. It's this big, and I think that it's something that we could meet and discuss in a matter of, I don't know, an hour and a half, 2 hours, and reach some reasonable consensus. I don't think we're reinventing the wheel on the cart in front of the horse.
Mr. Chadwell?
Okay, I wasn't sure if this was on. So a couple things is thank you for those comments on that. And I will say that, this is a district. This district has always been innovative. I look at these cameras here, all these cameras that we have. This was installed long before I got on the school board. And this was required before school districts were required to record video and audio record meetings. And I don't know when, it was a couple sessions ago, the law changed, and that required them to have, I think it's 10,000 students or larger, 20,000, whatever the number was. But Round Rock was always ahead that way. And some people have looked at these cameras and this video and this broadcast as a problem, because sometimes we'll say things up here, but until we vote on something, until we make a motion, and there's a second and a discussion, we vote, there's nothing that's binding this district or this board and the district to anything. Yes, I agree that even up here we can make statements, we can make faux pas, and we've all made some comments that we've looked at, but we're not binding the district, we're not binding anybody to it, and we've always been civil up here. We have our disagreements, and that's healthy, but we're not disrespectful. We're certainly not disrespectful to anybody in the public, and that's something that we could develop as we go along. And I will say that it has been it's one of these things that we look at and we can say it. And again, I'll augment what you said, Mr. Math. This does not replace our interactions that we have with the community right now. And as far as I understand it, Ms. Weir, the public can see these comments real time. Is that correct? But they cannot comment on the board. Is that right?
Yes.
They can see where
that's
there's. It's like
the way the law is written.
It's like having a meeting, and they can watch what we're discussing on the message board. All right, thank you.
Mr. Moses, you clicked and then you took it off, but
I mean, again, I just want to reiterate this is, and I've told you this, President Weir, it's the general concept of it, I can see the value. I mean, Fortune 500 companies across the world have message boards like this they use to try and streamline meetings and do things. And I think you look at the city of Austin, I think one of the reasons why theirs probably works is that they're paid. Theirs make close to $75,000 a year, and they're posting, whatever I've seen, primarily between the hours of 8 and 6. We're all, I mean, they have some late night posts I've seen, and I'm sure sometimes that happens. But I look at us, and a lot of us up here have full-time jobs. We're full-time parents. We have other commitments, not just for ourselves, but like today, Trustee Gonzalez and I spent about an hour over at Spicewood Elementary as they were going through their IB recertification work. And we have other commitments in places. I know Trustee Vesta's great about going out and visiting campuses and meeting places, and so is Trustee Feller. So there's a lot of other work that we all do in the district already as volunteers, that this is now something that, again, what's going to be taken off the plate, our plate, and staff's plate to give us time to look at this and use this. And I haven't heard that. We haven't talked about, again, there's no final protocols, no final user manual, no final anything. It's just, let's just go do this. But, I mean, if it's the will of the board, that's the will of the board. But I am incredibly hesitant about this without seeing any type of user manual or protocols to go with it, even though I completely agree with Mr. Math's 4 points.
Mr. Math.
Yeah, so this isn't something new. I hear that there's a general agreement with the concept, but this is something that we've talked about for about a year. It was talked about on the dais in August. So if there was passion behind it, something, in my mind, should have happened already. And I'm just trying to get it moving. It's not like we're at square one. We've been at it for a year in concept, and certainly August, we had, well, I didn't, but you all had some discussion about it. So if we're going to do it, let's get moving.
Ms. Vessa.
Can you describe, President Weir, what the steps that you took when it came up before us in August to address some of these concerns that, I mean, were brought up before the vote in August about, making sure that we had parameters. Can you talk to that?
It has been a year, so I have to try to remember. But it was after we did our open meetings training. The Attorney General's office does mention the Austin Message Board as a good example to go and look at. And so I did, and Ms. Caputo and I went and met with Jimmy Flanagan with the city's office to ask them, maybe she can help me a little bit, but it was, how it worked, if they'd gotten negative feedback. Do you remember what else we...
Thank you. Essentially, we were looking at, from a technology standpoint, how onerous it would be, or if it was costly, and we're able to talk about their tool. They did build it in-house, and I'm not the technical person on my team, but I was able to go back to our webmaster and talk about what the tool would look like, and we did find out that we could build it in-house. In terms of the technology, it's not very difficult, and we have the ability, of course, to keep it closed just for board members and staff. But we did talk about the fact that we would have to have someone on staff making sure we're monitoring it. If there was information that we needed to get to board members, that there was someone that was managing that flow of information. But overall, Councilman Flanagan really enjoyed the message board.
And he gave us a copy of their user's manual and their the resolution, which then I brought back and changed to sort of just sort of fit ours. And I know Mr. Moses had several items that he was concerned about at that time. And, you know, we did try to update it. I know council was concerned about some of those changes. But then after August, we let it go.
So we went through this whole process. We did a lot of research. We looked at a user manual. We got a sense of what the other operator in the state using this, the parameters that they were putting on. We kind of tweaked them to fit our needs and uses. We got council opinion. So this, I think it's safe to say that even though we definitely have some additional work to do, it's not like we're starting from scratch. You actually did a lot of the work already. We already have a lot of the parameters, and really it's just final tweaks.
Right. At that point, we didn't have Dr. Howard, so incorporating Lone Star governance wasn't part of that. So we would need to definitely do that.
Yeah, and if you'll allow me, if I can, I'll ask a question of the board, I guess. And you know, I'm pleased from the Lone Star governance standpoint to say, okay, this isn't there to take away from the two-way communication systems and those advocacy pieces that we have out in the community. I think there's broad consensus around that. So that to me, in Lone Star governance, good governance research is clear that the two-way communication with your community, administration, board, doing that in collaboration is what makes the difference, that helps improve the environment and student outcomes and on and on. Maybe to help clear this up for all board members is it's not going to take the place of the two-way communication system. So come down to exactly, maybe in a sentence or two, what is the purpose? What are we seeking, as I say we, but what are y'all seeking as a board to accomplish with this message board, and how is the message board going to be better to accomplish that? And maybe if we get down to what is it we want to accomplish and how's this going to help accomplish it, and just get down to what's the nitty-gritty purpose of it, that may help everybody be a little bit more on, okay, this is we're clear on this is what we're trying to do with it, and this is how it's going to help accomplish that purpose, if that makes sense.
I can answer for me, especially with how much it fits better almost with Lone Star governance, because getting so much on consent agenda, I feel like we don't have the opportunity. I mean, I have the opportunity to ask staff questions, but nobody else has seen those questions. No, I mean, Dr. Flores is good about, sending them to the whole board later, but then if I had a follow-up question to something that Corey asked or, one of the other trustees, then I don't really have that opportunity if we're going to do consent and we're going to keep it going. Whereas I think if we had that opportunity and the ability to have a little bit of a discussion once you see what other people have asked, then I feel more confident about the consent agenda, and it feels like we could put even more things on the consent agenda.
But the whole purpose is, if you have a question on a consent agenda item, is that you pull it from it for a discussion. So that doesn't seem to flow what the normal process is right now. Like if you ask a question and then you still have more questions, then we pull it from the consent end area and move it to the discussion item.
Right, that's what we do now. But I mean, I guess I just sort of envision a smoother, quicker meeting in a sense, in that we wouldn't have to drop it down, right? We could have already taken care of that.
I don't think we've pulled anything from the consent agenda. Maybe one or two items, but not much, right?
Right. Sorry, Ms. Vessa.
Well, I mean, you gave the example of the consent agenda, but the truth of the matter is, like, we ask questions on all kinds of different things, action items, and over the course of the year, there's been many occasions where I've had conversations with other trustees that said, gosh, I wish I had seen your questions, because after you asked that question, I saw the answer. I had like 6 more questions that that you made me think of after seeing their response. But at that point, it was too late. We couldn't get, the additional information. And so I just think really it's a way for us to collaborate without violating open meetings, that we can and better communicate our ideas before meetings so that we can have more pointed, informative questions for our digestion and the public's digestion during these meetings. I mean, that was a huge impetus for this concept.
Mr. Moses.
Thank you, Madam President. And I hear the argument for consent, but I just want to remind everybody, the PIB brought forward a policy to lengthen the time period in which we would get information. And that was something that this board decided not to take action on. So if that's still of interest, then we can do that and try that and see how that works, rather than to create something new. And so that's just a suggestion. That way we're not having to, again, create something brand new. Because I've agreed with the idea with the thing about consent and getting things longer, having more communication. That's why we brought forward the policy. But at that time, there still seemed to be some concerns about that. And so the feedback was just kind of nothing about moving that forward. So I'm just reminding the board. Thank you.
My light was on.
Sorry.
No, that's
Ms.
okay.
Gonzalez.
So just to kind of get where we're coming from, I do think what we're doing right now is we're building the framework. I think we're doing what several of us have asked for, and I want to just kind of pause a minute. And how we got here is in August, there was a motion and this failed. So if we're trying to bring it back, why can't we build it in a way that makes sense to some of us that were not for it? Let's try to work together through the LSG model, because I'm going to have to be sold on how this is going to affect student outcomes. And let's start building best practices, framework, what we're doing right now. I just don't think that's asking for much, especially since this is new to us. Corporations might have done this for millions of years or whatever, but this is very new to school board.
Mr. Chadwell.
Thank you. First of all, one good thing about government that I like about local government, and think what you will about national government, but we are very open, we're very transparent. A lot of school districts share information. County, the cities, school districts all share information. I've worked for many corporate publicly traded companies, and they are very ultra secret with their information. I don't know of any that have anything like a message board like this. They do have their Twitter accounts, but they don't have feedback like that. So I just want to make sure that this is a little bit different clarification on that. My view is that we've talked about this. We let it sit for a while. We looked at it. We reviewed it. And again, I'm going to go back to two things. One is expedite our meetings, and two is transparency. I don't know why there's hesitancy about this. Why is this opposed to being transparent? It doesn't mean that we can't improve it and tweak it as we go along. But I think there's an urgency. There's so much information going on with budgets, with new laws, with the new goals that we want to do, implementing LSG, that right now we can expedite this, and it's not in place of discussions. It's an augmentation, I think is what you said, Mr. Math.
Mr. Moses.
And this will be the last thing I'll say. I'd say transparency, to me, is us coming here prepared to have a conversation. It's not doing it on a message board that people aren't. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm sure the people who are very engaged and involved, they'll go check it out on occasion and they'll go look at it. But people know in this community that the third Thursday every month is Round Rock ISD trustee meeting. They know that, and they'll tune in, they'll watch it, and they'll read the paper the next day to see what happened. We need to make sure it's transparent here, the conversations happen here, and we're looking each other in the face, and not on a message board that's a click or two away from the homepage of the ISD website. To me, that's not transparent. Transparency is doing it in public.
It actually has to be on the homepage. Just okay.
I mean, I think the thing that makes me reticent to delay is that we can develop all this stuff and we can put it, which either way, whether we vote on it today or we don't vote on it today and we vote it after it's developed, it's going to get developed. But I don't know, I don't hear that even if we did everything we could to ensure that it was a useful tool, I don't hear you being for it anyway.
No, I think
The
you're
people that
hearing
voted
us.
for it
No, I think
didn't vote for it last time. I don't know what we can do to make
Well, I
to
think you're
change
making
that.
an assumption when we're seeking knowledge, when we're wanting to sit down and have that conversation and actually build something, a framework. So please don't speak for us and make an assumption that we're.
It just sounds that way. That's the way it sounds.
All right, let's,
I call the question.
yeah. So we did have a motion, and I'm going to ask you to reread your motion because I don't think I can repeat it. We had a motion and a second.
Would you consider?
Before I read my motion, I would like to ask Trustee Feller if she would offer a friendly amendment.
Ooh. Okay, spot on. Okay, let's see. Well, I don't have it written down, but I would say if you can include.
Let me reread the motion just so you have something to build on. I move to authorize the creation of an online message board as permitted by law and to review its effectiveness in 6 months.
Maybe we could add to, with the caveat that we have, before it is launched, there are,
that's what I was going to say.
That's what I'm trying to process and how exactly we say this. Can we kind of just say what we all said and then formulate it in? What's the legal,
How about
legal words that we need?
Not to be implemented until.
Right, not to be launched by that, meaning going live and being usable. Before that happens, from what I heard, is that you'd like a user manual that would outline protocols, what the do's and don'ts,
Alignment with LSG.
alignment with LSG,
Established time period for review.
which is the 6 month
So we've got
Yep.
that already in
part of
there.
his motion.
Yep.
Any other?
And the fourth thing was seeking input from
Yeah.
all board members to put the appropriate parameters.
Look,
around
I
its
can
use.
see the value in it, but I just cannot vote for something that I don't have the structure that what I'm voting on. And I think that that's just pure due diligence of whether we authorize something, we have to know what's the goal of this, or what's the mission statement, and how are we going to use it, and is it going to be just a, hey, we're going to pop on with a question here and there, or is, I just really feel like there needs to be some structure for how we're going to use this. Everything else that we do as a board is very structured and very frameworked, and then you're throwing something out here, and it doesn't ever go away, and that's fine. I like that, but things have happened on this dais that have, we just need structure on it.
Okay.
So if we can have the structure and the framework, and then put a date that we'll vote on it at the February 1st for the I'm not asking for a lot of time. I'm not trying to push this can down the road, but we had this conversation in June, then we had a long break, then we voted on it in August, and then I've heard nothing about it in 7 months, and then it comes back up, and I see it on the agenda when it comes out on last Friday that the message board is back on there, and we literally haven't talked about it at all in 6 months, and now voting after one conversation to implement this again. And I just think that we really have to have that framework.
If we had a message board, we could have discussed the message board on it. That was humor.
Okay, so we still have a motion and a second on there. So are you offering? Can I put some words out there? A amendment to.
Do I just make a second motion?
Oh yeah.
So it would be easier if you just made a substitute motion.
Okay.
Right? So that would be a whole new motion, and then that would be the first one you vote on, and that would
Let me see.
replace the original motion.
Okay. All right. I move to authorize the creation of a framework for the online message board as permitted by law, consistent with LSG, under the direction of something how to include a user manual for within the next 30 days. Do we have to put a deadline on it?
It's perhaps helpful if you do.
So
you're asking
Okay,
me
so
to do it again, please, if you don't mind.
I move to authorize the creation of a framework for the online message board as permitted by law and to include consistencies with LSG and the is that right? I need to write
As
it down.
part of the development of the user's manual?
Okay, hold on. Let me write it down. Okay, I move to authorize
I think
the
Ms.
creation of
Caputo
a-
just said the framework is already there. And
She
Ms.
said the
Williams
technical
Well, the
framework.
technical
right there.
framework.
What I
user
mean is the
manual.
tool is created. There is no
Framework.
framework. That would be something that the board would
And the
would provide
guideline that we
input.
have, we could follow the Austin.
Well, we would have to
Okay,
change
I got it. I move to authorize the creation of a framework and user manual for an online message board as permitted by law and consistent with LSG.
But we were going to put a time.
Oh, and within the next 30 days. Or what's the deadline? By the February board meeting? By the February, can I put that in there? By the February.
Are you saying that then there'd be another vote as to whether it's a launch? Is that what you're proposing, or is it automatic at the end of once this vote on the 30th of the February board? What are you proposing?
Well, I'm proposing that we vote on this framework and users manual at the February board meeting to the implementation of the message board.
Right. And so, just so that everyone's clear, so the launching of a message board, is that issue deferred until that is done? And so if the board doesn't agree on the user manual or what have you, then there's no launch?
Yes.
Is that what you're...
Yes.
Just want to be clear.
Could I just bring
Yes.
out with our deadlines for having things ready for on the agenda, that's really a very fast turnaround. I'd have to ask Patty, but I think it would be like a couple of weeks.
We've
that
got to
we'd have
remember
put it
what we're talking
together.
about. We're talking about boundaries. We've got a lot of upcoming meetings. At some point, we've got to set some priorities here. And I would think
Great
that
opportunity for
boundaries
the
is a
message board.
priority.
Well, and I think Dr. Howard and I talked about Team of 8 is going to focus on communication. So we can easily work on it then.
I'm fine not including a deadline, but that be our goal. And if we can drive it as a board and put it on our agenda for the February 1st training.
The Team of 8
Can I-
training in
Can I
February.
say something? I've been quiet for a long time here, and that's almost impossible. But what I'll say is that I do think that if we're having this much discussion about trying to get clarity, my worry is whatever we do, what it means for staff. And all I'm saying here, I look at two-way communication. We haven't set an agenda for the Team of 8 training on February 1st. Two-way communication was already something that I know that Ms. Caputo and I just today and last week were talking about what does that look like. When I met with you guys before, we said, hey, we're going to have a two-way communication plan. I'm hoping before we set the agenda for February 1 that we talk about what a two-way communication plan looks and sounds like. And I think it's going to be a very good plan, and input will be provided for and by the board as well. But then if we can overlay with some specifics of how we can make the message board be something that can assist us with that two-way communication plan, I think then we talk about there's more clarity. And again, let me be clear, this is the decision of the board, but the more clarity we can provide for this administration, if that's who's going to create, because who's going to create the message board? Who's going to create? That's a question I'm asking. It's going to be administration. I don't think it's going to be board members creating the logistics to that. I'm all for that if this is what the board wants. However, at the same time, I want to make sure that we have the clear parameters so that no one walks out and says, see, administration fouled this up. And there will be people that do that. And I do not want that. And the other thing, if in fact, when we talk about Lone Star governance monitoring, I heard that 5 times, LSG monitoring. Well, LSG is focused on student outcomes. So if that's what we're really focused on, then I would think the message board is focused on student outcomes. Anything outside that, I don't know what LSG monitoring would look like and sound like. I'd want more information for that. So anyway, those are just my thoughts, and I'll be quiet.
Mr. Chadwell.
I think that was on from before, but
Oh,
I will
was it?
say real
Okay.
quick, again, the staff, back to the comments about the staff, we're not going to take any action on the message board. It's a discussion to expedite our meetings and get us to where we all are. When we come in here, we're meeting, we're going faster, we're already up to speed on it. So there shouldn't be any confusion to the staff at that point. I mean, you still have the opportunity to discuss on the dais any motions that we make up here.
Oh, Mr. Rath.
Oh, am I acknowledged?
Yes.
Okay. I totally get Trustee Feller's intent and agree with it. However, I have a fear that if we kind of kick the can down the road another month and try to agree on the user manual wording, and then we run into conflict with boundary discussions, this is going to just drag on and on and on. And I'd just like to just launch the process, and we're just going to have to trust each other that we won't launch the message board until there's consensus.
Ms. Feller?
I'm sorry, I'm still processing what Trustee Math said. I can't, to Trustee Vessa's point earlier, I can't vote for something that I don't know what I'm actually voting for. With the creation of a framework and a user's manual, I can't get behind it. So I'll give you that much, that I'm not going to shut this discussion down forever, that I will vote against it again and again and again, but I can't vote for something that I don't know exactly what I'm voting for. And to me, there's just too much ambiguity, and so I get behind the will of the board. If this passes, or if it votes tonight, I think it's pretty clear how it's going to fall. If it pushes it down just a little bit, then might have a chance of having more votes for the board, for the message board.
Ms. Vessa?
I mean, I would like more unity, and if I felt like if we could take steps to bring more clarity, that we could have a unanimous vote or close to a unanimous vote, that would be my preference. And if you're saying that that's that you would really, as long as you're involved in this process and we can come to some agreement, it may not be perfection, but we come to some agreement, then you would be on board. And I think that should be taken into consideration, because I think the more we're unified, the better this will go.
I'd like to see unity too, obviously, but I just look into my crystal ball and I just see us having a very similar conversation a month from now to the one we're having right now. And, at some point we just got to buckle down and move forward and trust each other that we'll work together to develop a product.
Well, I want to hear your thoughts, President. I mean, this was your idea.
Yes, this is very near and dear to my heart. So I would like to maybe alleviate some of Dr. Flores's worries. I mean, I would be happy to volunteer and take it off of staff's plate myself, if that was okay with everybody else, and work with Dr. Howard and with Jenny, absolutely. And, because I don't want to necessarily put anything more onto plate of staff. I know we do have a lot going on with boundaries and with budget coming up and all of those things. And I know her staff has already done quite a bit of work technically on this. And since we met with Jimmy Flanagan together, and I know that we could come up with something. And so I guess what I would really like to say is that I know that trust has been an issue. And I guess I wouldn't envision us going live or turning it on or doing anything until we had all those parameters really set, and Dr. Howard was comfortable with it, and Dr. Flores and Jenny were on board with what we were doing. I do truly feel like we will be first, and that's scary, and I get that. I also think this is the kind of district that we can be first, and we can be the model for everybody else that's doing LSG and that may come after us. I mean, if it works for us, I mean, I can see us being the example at, all of these trainings that everybody wants to go to and make a presentation. I mean, I truly think that it could be great, and I could be completely wrong, and I am not above saying I'm wrong. And if we do this for even 3 months and it's like, holy cow, this is terrible, it's not working at all, I'll be the first person up here saying, you know what, I was wrong. And I guess that's my pledge to everybody. And I know that people still have concerns, and we have Mr. Mass' motion on the table, which it sounds like we're going to go forward with that. And I know it's kind of scary, but I guess what I would really ask is that even though some of you have concerns, that you consider just supporting those of us that want to do it, knowing that we do have Team of 8 coming up. We are going to really be working on communication, and that I am truly committed to us working together and making this great.
Can I make one more comment, and then I'll be quiet too? Besides the legal parameters that have to be met, maybe some suggestions if you move forward with this is to really monitor 3 areas. Obviously, student outcomes. So let's monitor the amount of time and we do this already in Lone Star Governance, right? The amount of time we're spending in our board meetings monitoring student outcome goals. And if this is a piece that gets implemented, is the amount of time in board meetings really increasing that we're monitoring student outcome goals, or is it not? Does it make a difference, or does it not? I think secondly, you got to monitor staff time preparing for the board meetings and monitoring the message board versus the current practices. You got to weigh the benefits and costs of staff's use of time. And then third, monitor, the amount of times that the board stays focused on the outcomes and the administration stays focused on the inputs and outputs. And as long as those lines aren't crossed, then you're staying good. So those are kind of my 3 suggestions if you move forward with this, is to possibly use as metrics to measure is it being effective or not.
Mr. Moses.
I know it probably won't make a difference, but we need to remember that we're not making decisions for the 7 of us. We're making decisions for every single person who comes on this board afterwards. Because once we open Pandora's box, there's not going to be a lot of going back there's some major issues. So just remember that we're making this not just for, I hear a lot about trust. There may be trust among the 7 of us, but who knows who's going to be sitting in these chairs 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now.
All right. Mr. Math.
Okay, I'm going to throw a little knuckleball in here. I'm actually willing to buy into the motion made by Trustee Feller. However, on February 20th, when's our next board meeting?
That is our board meeting.
On our next board meeting, if we don't have anything hashed out that we could vote on, I'm going to put forward the same exact motion that I made today. So what I'm doing is I'm challenging this board to come up with those parameters and user manual, et cetera, in 30 days.
Okay, so you're gonna withdraw your first motion?
Well, rather than withdraw it, I will allow Trustee Feller to.
Yeah, if you second it, then you'll vote on the substitute motion that Trustee
Yes.
Feller.
Okay, so we have a motion. Will you read your motion again, please?
I move to authorize the creation of a framework and user manual for an online message board as permitted by law and consistent with Lone Star governance.
We're going to add?
Nope.
No.
And then he's going to.
Okay.
Can we read that one more time?
I move to authorize the creation of a framework and user manual for an online message board as permitted by law and consistent with LSG, Lone Star Governance.
Any stipulation on the 20th? Is that you, Mr. Math?
So we
So-
put it back on our February 20th board meeting. And
We're going to put it back on the February 20th board meeting, and if this board has not come up with framework and user manual that's agreed upon, I'm just going to put forward my original motion.
Okay, so then, do we have a second for Ms. Feller's motion?
Well, they're not willing to second it.
I agree. I'm not going to second it either then. You got to compromise. I showed a willingness to compromise. I'm not.
But I'm not going to be held hostage to second your motion.
And it's been, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been suggested to me that it'd be politically expedient for me to support this message board. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to, again, be held hostage by political expediency whenever I think this is a bad idea. I don't think it's wise for us to be out there on the forefront of this, given the fact that, I'll be very frank, why I respect every single person at this dais. I really do. I think that we actually bring a very good cross-section of this district together. It's ugly at times, but I think that actually can be healthy. The experience on this board is not at a level that I think is one that can maturely handle this tool just yet. Perhaps if we continue on LSG, we can get there. I just don't think we're there yet.
Mr. Chadwell?
Okay, there was a motion, but no second. Is that correct? So I'm
Correct.
going to go
There
back.
was
I'm going
no-
to call the question back to Mr. Math's original, unless you withdraw it, Mr. Math. I'm going to go forward. I'm going to call the question on your original motion.
Okay, so we have Mr. Math's original motion. I'm going to ask you to read it again, please.
Madam President, I move to authorize the creation of an online message board as permitted by law and to review its effectiveness in 6 months.
Okay, so we had a motion and a second on that. Yeah, I think it was Chad. Mhm. Is there any further?
Ms. Aguilera, are you keeping up with this?
All right, so we have a motion and a second. And Mr. Chadwell has asked that we call the question. So all those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed? Okay, so it passes 4-3. Thank you. My pledge still stands. So hopefully we can maybe get together, the three of us. All right, so we will move on now to I3, consideration to authorize the review of information enclosed by the full board regarding a prior investigation and pending litigation, cause number 119 CV 602 RP, John R.R. ISD Doe versus Round Rock Independent School District. And this was just to authorize the board to hear in closed an audio tape. Is that Mr. Chadwell?
I don't see a motion here, but we just need a motion to authorize this? Is that
correct?
Just to hear it later. Okay,
Right.
I move that we authorize the board to listen to it in closed session.
All right, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Mr. Moses? Oh, okay. So we have a motion and a second now to authorize the review of the information listed on the agenda. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? All right, so that one passed 7-0. Now we will, there's no other public communication, so we will go to K1, Facilities and Finance Committee, Amber Feller.
So we had our first Facilities and Finance Committee for the 2020 on January the 16th. We had 4 discussion items. Dr. Audix briefly talked about the portables and efficiencies, but as you all recall, there was a massive storm that was coming in town, so he had to be pulled away quickly, but thank you for your discussion items. We talked about the boundary adjustment plan, which basically just included announcing the 5 upcoming dates for the community to input. I'm not going to go through all those right now. They're all posted. They're in emails. I've seen them in lots of different places. So there are 5 different locations that are coming up. We talked about the upcoming aquatic practice facility. We looked at a presentation by Kirksey Architecture and specifically looking at adhering to the bond target and what exactly we're going to be able to get with the money that the bond's allowing. And for the last one, we talked about the 2018 bond update and overview. I will be forwarding you, or have Ms. Aguilera forward the rest of the board, a couple of documents that were brought to the committee to review where we stand on a lot of these projects. So it's very exciting. There's a new software that we as a district are going to be using called Procore, and a lot more accountability, a lot more transparency and things like that. We, as a board, it was discussed that we would be given administrative level to check in on projects and things like that, so it's very exciting. Next meeting is tentatively scheduled for February 7th, and be looking forward to the next steps in our facilities committee.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Feller? All right, Mr. Moses.
Thank you, Madam President. One thing, February 3rd is our next PIB meeting. You heard Dr. Audix talk a little bit about the budget calendar, and so we'll be kicking that process off at that date, getting that information. Excited about that. I know Trustee Ware talked with you. I know we'll get kind of more formal at our team of 8, but I want to try this year, the PIB, to really keep it focused on our priorities. So the policies that we bring forward are going to try and be really tied closely to LSG and those our goals there, things to impact that, as well as any other initiatives, whether that be boundaries, safety, security, otherwise that those relate to. So we're going to try and keep us laser focused on those type of things that are clearly the board's priorities.
Awesome. Are there any questions for Mr. Moses? Then we have K3, board announcements and requests for future agenda items. And one thing I was going to let the full board know is I talked to Trustee Feller earlier today. As board secretary, she's going to work with Patty and really try to keep track when we talk during our meetings of, I'd like that extra information. I'd like, or staff says, I'll get that to you. I know Patty does a really good job, but kind of putting the onus back on us a little bit to make sure we're keeping track of what we've asked for and making sure that our requests for future agenda items actually get on the agenda in a timely fashion. So I want to thank Trustee Feller for taking that on. And I was just going to say, Team of 8, obviously, thank you for mentioning that, Trustee Moses, because I've reached out to some of you. I don't know if I've talked to everybody, but I will be, because I'm also trying to get ideas of things that you feel are important for us to discuss at that meeting. So if I haven't talked to you, I promise I will, and kind of have it in the back of your head, things that you would like addressed. I have a couple more things, but Mr. Chadwell.
All right, these are real quick. One is the food service. We've had that comment, and I know there was a discussion at one point years ago about trays, and this is a topic that has come up several times from our comments. I don't know if that's something, Dr. Audix or Mr. Worcester, that we can get an idea on that. How many trays do we go through and go back? But we did look at alternates on that. And I think this is something that continues to come up. So maybe in a board update, certainly not in a week or as soon as you can, but certainly, within reason. And the other thing is the investigation. It was brought up. We did vote on that as we came out. We'd already voted on it, so I couldn't comment. But we had a speaker talk earlier, and that investigation is to pass information on to the attorney who's doing it. So just if that person is still watching, we did hear the comments, and it is in progress.
Did you have something, Ms. Bessa?
Did you want to clarify, though, what I think there's a misunderstanding about what our board investigation is of and what the internal district investigation is of. So I think that for the community to clarify.
Mr. Ponick, we'll let Mr. Ponick answer
It's
that
very
one.
tempting to try to get into some of the comments that folks bring to your attention and you want to clarify things. Unfortunately, this is not on the agenda, so it's not something you can do. But I think there are perhaps administrative ways to address that issue. So I would say let's not have a board discussion on that.
But you can clarify, right, Mr. Ponick, that this is not an investigation, it was a review.
A review, yes.
The
What was
authorization.
authorized, correct.
Exactly.
Yes,
And
sir.
so somehow I think that needs to be corrected or discussed.
That can be part of the messaging that goes out, but the board authorized a review.
A review, not an investigation of investigations.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I just had two other comments. One, and I talked about it at the PTA luncheon today because I got information from Jenny right before, and Dr. Flores and I have talked about Senate Bill 11 and the Safety Committee, but I don't think the full board has been updated on that, so maybe we could update them. I felt kind of strange making an announcement at the PTA luncheon today when I felt like I didn't know that everybody on this board knew what was going on. And then the other thing I was going to ask, you and I did talk about some of the emails that we'd gotten from the dyslexic parents and we've talked about it again, but I don't think the full board has been updated on that. So if we could make sure there's an update on what's going on with that, that would be.
Right. We don't have tomorrow's not a board update, but just to be clear, staff does not, and we don't provide board updates, but on these two topics, I think we can clarify that. I know that, Mr. Yarbrough with the safety, security, and Senate Bill 11, it's a great work in progress, so we're really close. I think he and Jenny were actually talking about that, so we need to do that tomorrow. And then also, I think Mandy's, because of the importance of the dyslexia audit that we were talking about, some clarification for the board tomorrow. We can have that tomorrow. It won't be a formalized board update, but you'll have that tomorrow. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. Anybody else? Oh, Ms. Vessa.
Also, another thing, I would like to get an update. You kind of gave a little bit of an update today at the PTA Council luncheon on the progress towards the TCOL application and our, implementing our safety and security measures. So I think that's probably timely to have soon to have an update on the progress of that.
Yeah, I agree. I think the sooner the better, because I do think that there are some timelines and some other things that we're going to have to do with regards to moving that process, because it is sooner rather than later, June of 2021. So, yes, we'll do that next board. Thanks.
Mr. Moses.
I'll be very quick. I know it's on our board calendar, but this weekend is the MLK Day March on Saturday. It's a great event. Unfortunately, my son has a basketball game during that time, but I went last year. It's tremendous. I remember what the student presented there, came and then spoke at in that next board meeting. So I hope those who can, I know it's Saturday, family commitments and all, but if you can get out there, I hope we can.
And it's in the afternoon, right? I think it starts at CD Folks this year.
Yeah,
it's like at 1 this year.
I think it starts
Actually,
at
I was
1 at
gonna
Baca Center. 1 at Baca Center. They march over to the First Baptist is what I saw.
No, I think they're ending at Baca this year.
Well, I've got information on that. I was going to say something about that, but that's
Okay,
right.
it's
It's
a great
actually
event.
the 33rd annual. I mean, think about that. The 33rd annual commemorative walk and celebration to celebrate the life and legacy of Martin Luther King on January 18th from 1 p.m. through 3:30 p.m. And the Round Rock Black History Organization, and it begins is sponsoring that with also Round Rock ISD has some assistance with that and others as well. First Baptist Church of Round Rock, and it begins at the McConical Building, 301 West Baghdad, and then it ends at the First Baptist Church. And Dr. Courtney Robinson will be the guest speaker, and that's January 18th, Saturday, 1 p.m. to 3:30 p.m.
All right. Ms. Feller, you had one?
We've thrown out LSG a little bit tonight. I just wanted to also update one of the things I'm taking on as secretary is I have kept detailed minutes of starts and stop times of everything that we've talked on tonight and how many minutes we've spent on everything. So maybe the first couple of months I will need to work with Dr. Howard to see exactly where each one of these fall into our slots. But Shockingly, the largest chunk of time was on the online message board discussion, but I have been keeping very good track of all those minutes, and we'll work with Dr. Howard to get them lined out, and so we can.
Awesome! You got us some more points.
Yep, to see how we are adhering to Lone Star governance. So, just wanted to give you an update that I did do that in the background. Now, maybe next time you'll be a little more efficient in your discussions.
You had something, Ms. Bessa.
So I just have an announcement. Last night was the TASB grassroots meeting for Region 13, and I'll be serving on the TASB Legislative Advisory Council to develop and approve legislative priorities to recommend to the TASB Legislative Committee and Board of Directors for final adoption as part of the association's legislative agenda. So I'm one of 7 other LAC representatives from our region, so I'm excited to do that.
Awesome. Congratulations. And we have one more congratulations we need to acknowledge before we leave, because somebody's a new grandpa as of today. So we need details. What details do we have of baby Luna?
Yes, baby Luna was born at 4:40, I think. 4:40, and I say think because that's when I got the message, but it was pretty clear from that. But Luna Lair Flores is born in St. Louis, and I'll be flying out with my wife tomorrow for our first grandbaby and our first visit, so thanks.
Congratulations.
Thanks, and that's why I won't be there for the Saturday walk. That's the first time I'll have missed the Saturday walk, Martin Luther King, and the Monday, as the speaker spoke earlier. I think it is important that Wilco MLK Leadership Summit, and I know that Trustee and President Weir will be there, but yeah, I feel like an old man. I don't want to be called Grandpa or Grant. I don't know what my name will be.
Be Grandpa.
I'm sure there's a lot of names people are thinking about.
Congratulations. That's so exciting. All right. So now the board reserves the right to enter into closed session on any agenda item as permitted by the Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.071. We're going to go to number 1, pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.071, review of information by the full board regarding a prior investigation and pending litigation, cause number 119 CV 602 RP, John R.R. ISD Doe versus Round Rock Independent School District. The board reserves the right to enter into closed session on any agenda item as permitted by the Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.071 at sequence. And with that, we are going to go into closed 9:14.
I recommend everybody clear off your table here because we're not going to come back out and take any action, right?
No, we are not going to come take any
that
action.
way
Oh, yeah, we can let
Jennifer
staff
can
clean up.
clean up the table or put everything away while we're in there.
Thanks.